This is a bit of biology with Mr. Rock, and today we are going to be talking about natural selection. So to begin this video, we're actually going to talk about something else first, and that is going to be artificial selection. Artificial selection is a process where humans are selecting the traits that they want to see in a species. So humans are picking the traits, and they are doing this through breeding. So something to underline or star in your notes, right there. Humans are selecting the traits. Good examples of this would be livestock, agriculture, and dogs. So I think this is best shown through livestock. Is over the past 100 years, we've been selecting traits for chickens and cows to give us a higher yield of meat and a higher yield for cows for milk. So we're picking the traits that we want from the cows that's going to give us more food or more milk. As for dogs, we've been artificially selecting dogs even before Darwin. We've selected dogs to be lap dogs, to be cute, to be good hunters, and we've picked what traits we want to see. And we even do this today. Like a popular species is the Labradoodle, and it's a big dog, but it doesn't shed. So we're even still like doing this today with dog breeding. So artificial selection is different than natural selection. In artificial, humans were picking the traits. In natural selection, the environment is going to select which traits are successful. So this is a process where organisms better adapted to their environment are going to survive more and reproduce more. So like if you look at the picture of giraffes, if the environment has food that is only available at the tops of trees, only traits that give organisms the ability to get to that food are going to be selected. Short individuals are going to die because they're not going to get food and they're not going to reproduce. Before we go on and talk about some factors that influence natural selection, I do want to talk about what an adaptation is. An adaptation is any inherited trait that increases an organism's chance of survival. So we use adaptation like, oh, I need to adapt to like my new environment. Like individuals do not adapt because the trait has to be inherited. It needs to be passed down via DNA. So if we were talking about the cold, like when we look at individuals that live in the Arctic, you are going to see a lot of adaptations to help individuals live in the cold. So seals and walruses, they have this thing called blubber, which is like a layer of fat that keeps them warm and insulated. Polar bears have really thick fur. They have large feet to spread out their body weight against the ice. So you see all these adaptations to help them survive in the environment, which is the cold. These adaptations would be horrible in a desert. They wouldn't work there. So the environment determines what adaptations are going to be successful. So factors that are going to influence natural selection, this is going to be overproduction, genetic variation, struggle to survive, and differential reproduction. And I'm going to talk about each of these individually. The first is overproduction. This is when a population produces more offspring than can survive. So if you can't see it in the picture, there's like 100 turtles in the picture. And one thing you see in a species is sometimes they produce too many offspring. And the reason why they do that is because you want the best, the strongest to survive out of that bunch. And I think the best way this is explained through an analogy of high school sports. So if you have a football team and you have 22 people that are going to have starting positions, like 3A football in Minnesota is like a smaller high school. So like that's a high school with 1,000 people. If you have 50 people that come out for the high school football team and there's 22 starting positions, you're going to have an okay team. But there's also classes in football that are 5A, and even in some states 6A, where if you have 1,000 people coming out for the football team versus 50, you're going to have more success, odds are, with the team that has 1,000 people coming out for the team. So same is true in evolution. Overproducing your offspring is going to give you better chances for your species to move forward. Okay, next we have genetic variation. You got to understand that in order for the environment, natural selection is the environment selecting the traits that are going to be successful. The environment cannot do that if there's no option. If we are all the same gray blobs and there's really no genetic variation among any of us, there's not going to be any selection that takes place. So why is there genetic variation in a population? This kind of goes back to genetics, but it is because there is sex, which crossing over and crossing two individuals' DNA, and then also mutations. Mutations occur, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. Just to be clear, if there is no genetic variation, then evolution will not occur. So if there's no variation within a population, evolution will not occur, and an example of this is like organisms going extinct. Like there might be genetic variation, but there's not enough for that species to continue. Struggle to survive, this is one of my favorite ones. If there is no competition, there is no reason to change. So there is an inherent need or inherent desire in every organism to live and survive and not be eaten. Like we all want to live. So I just have a couple pictures up here. Really cool things, eat or be eaten is kind of the idea. And you have jellyfish that have poisonous tentacles. You have the monarch butterfly, which is poisonous, and then you have a butterfly that mimics the monarch butterfly because predators don't eat the monarch butterfly. You can be really fast, you can blend in, be camouflaged, but then also on the offensive side, you could be really strong, you could have sharp claws, you could be very fast, you could trap your prey, you can also be poisonous. So the ideas here are going to be fitness, and I actually want to start this idea too. It's one of the most important in biology. The idea is it's the ability of an organism to survive and reproduce. And you are judged as a biological individual based off your ability to survive and based off your ability to reproduce. And this is going to be the driving theme for evolution: surviving, reproducing. And this ties into survival of the fittest, which is going to be the process by which individuals better suited to their environment survive and reproduce more. So if you're better suited, you survive and you reproduce more, and we actually use survival of the fittest frequently in our modern language. And then finally, last concept here, differential reproduction. If you are better adapted, you will live longer and reproduce more. So if you look at this beetle example, the birds are eating the green beetles because the tan or orange ones blend in with the bark better. So if you're a baby green beetle, okay, and you get eaten by birds, you are not going to pass on your green beetle genes to offspring. So the idea here is, because there's differences, there's genetic variation. Successful genetic variation, a good adaptation, is going to allow you to reproduce and pass on your successful genes to future offspring, because you live longer, and that means you get to reproduce more. This has been a bit of biology with Mr. Rock, signing off.